I still remember the silence before it happened, that kind of silence that doesn't just fill the room, it fills your soul. I was somewhere between waking and dreaming, floating in a light that felt alive. Then, out of that light, I saw him. Jesus. He was standing only a few steps away, but it felt like eternity stretched between us. His robe wasn't just white, it shimmered with warmth, like every sunrise I had ever seen folded into one. His eyes, they were unlike anything on this earth. In them, I saw oceans of compassion, and yet something else, sorrow. The kind of sorrow that only comes from loving people who keep hurting themselves. And then he wept. A single tear fell from his face, glowing as it hit the ground beneath him, and as it touched that holy soil, I heard his voice not through my ears, but inside me, as if my soul itself was listening. He said, "Tell them I have not forgotten them." In that instant, images began to flood around us like a storm of history and pain swirling in light. I saw faces, dark faces, strong and tired, but still singing. I saw men and women standing in fields under a merciless sun, their backs bent, their hands chained, and yet their eyes lifted upward. They sang through the night, they prayed through the suffering. Their songs were bruised with pain, but rich with faith. Jesus' voice trembled as he continued. The world sees their color. I see their endurance. I see hearts that have carried faith through fire. When others turned away, they sang to me in the dark. I wanted to speak, but I couldn't. My throat locked. My spirit was shaking. I saw generations mothers teaching their children to pray beside candlelight, fathers humming hymns in the middle of labor, grandmothers whispering the name of Jesus under their breath when no one dared to listen. And he said again, "They are my example of strength. They are the keepers of worship. Their voices still reach heaven when the world refuses to hear." At that moment, I realized this wasn't about race. This was about revelation, about what God sees when we only see difference. His tears weren't sorrow for one group of people. They were love for all of us, for how blind we've been to one another's beauty. The light grew stronger. I could feel my heart being pulled open, like someone was rewriting it from the inside. I saw fire, not fire of destruction, but of purity, black flames glowing brighter than gold, symbolizing faith that cannot be crushed. And in that fire I heard laughter, praise, forgiveness, and grace. Then Jesus looked at me not with anger, but with eyes that saw everything I'd ever been. He said softly, "Remember this, I made them with purpose. Their strength is my strength. Their story is not forgotten." And then the light began to fade. But that sentence, those words burned into me like eternal ink. When I woke, my pillow was soaked with tears. I didn't know if I had been asleep or standing in heaven. But one thing was certain, I would never see the world the same way again. That night didn't feel like any other night. It was one of those evenings when time moves slower, when your thoughts echo louder than the ticking of the clock. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the air still carried that heavy scent of wet earth, like something sacred was about to happen. I sat on the edge of my bed, the lamp still on, staring at the wall. My mind was crowded, news, noise, endless scrolling, the chaos of a world that seems to forget what peace even means. I was exhausted, not just in body but in soul, and in that exhaustion I whispered, almost without thinking, "Lord, if you're real, please speak to me tonight. I just need to know you haven't forgotten us." The words left my mouth, and I felt nothing. No thunder, no miracle, just silence. But it was the kind of silence that listens back. I turned off the light and lay down, waiting for sleep to come, but it didn't. Instead, I felt something shift in the air, like the atmosphere itself was breathing differently. My body grew heavy, but my spirit light. My thoughts began to fade like smoke, and I felt myself falling, not downward but inward. Then came the light. It began small, a flicker in the dark, soft and golden like candlelight. But it grew brighter until it filled everything. It wasn't just light I could see, it was light I could feel. It moved like water, it hummed like music, and every part of me knew this is not a dream. In that light, all fear disappeared. I didn't feel my weight, my worries, or even time itself. I felt known completely. Every scar, every thought, every memory was laid bare, and yet I wasn't ashamed. It was as if love itself had a face, and it was looking straight at me. That's when I saw him. Jesus didn't walk toward me. He simply was there as though he had always been, waiting for me to notice. The moment I saw his eyes, I understood eternity. They weren't just looking at me, they were looking through me into every corner of who I am. There was power in them, yes, but also a gentleness that undid me completely. I tried to speak, but I couldn't. My lips trembled, my body froze, and yet inside my spirit was shouting 1,000 words. Gratitude, fear, awe, love, confusion, all tangled into one. And then his voice came, not from outside, but from within, like my own heartbeat was speaking to me. Do not be afraid. I have something to show you. When he said those words, the light around us began to move. It wasn't chaotic, it was like watching truth take form. Shapes and scenes emerged, made of color and memory and meaning. I saw faces, landscapes, oceans, all woven together by something invisible, something divine. Then I felt his hand, not on my skin, but on my soul. It was warm, steady, and when he touched me, I knew everything I thought I understood about life, about faith, was about to change. That was the moment before the vision began. And though it started in a whisper, it would echo through the rest of my life like thunder. When I stood before him, I didn't feel like I was dreaming anymore. It felt more like I had finally woken up, as if everything before that moment had only been shadows, and now I was seeing the real world for the first time. The light around us wasn't blinding anymore. It had softened, as though it understood my weakness. I could finally lift my head slowly and look at him fully. There he was, Jesus. He didn't have the kind of beauty you'd paint in a picture or carve into a statue. No, his beauty was alive, it was truth. Every part of him seemed to breathe peace. His robe moved like a quiet river of light, but it wasn't the robe that held me, it was his eyes. There was power in them, yes, infinite power, but behind that power there was something else, pain. The pain of a love that has watched humanity wound itself again and again, and still chooses to forgive. I wanted to fall to my knees, but I couldn't move. My body wasn't heavy, but my soul was trembling. Every cell in me knew I was standing before the one who made me. And then he spoke, not through sound, not through language. It was as if his voice moved through the very light, and the light entered me. It wasn't heard, it was felt. Like thunder that didn't scare you, but healed you. Do not be afraid, he said. I have something to show you. I remember the way those words wrapped around me, calm but commanding, gentle yet unstoppable. And when he lifted his hand, the light around us began to shift. The world melted away, not destroyed, just peeled back. Like the veil between heaven and earth was being lifted one layer at a time. Behind it I saw visions, not dreams, not imagination, but truth. I saw a field under a pale blue sky, filled with people working the soil, their backs bent, their hands scarred. I saw chains, I saw ships moving through violent waters, But above all of it, I heard something, a sound that didn't belong to pain. It was singing, soft, broken, holy singing, voices lifted from the deepest sorrow, rising higher than the sea itself. And Jesus whispered, "Listen." I did. And what I heard broke me, because it wasn't just their voices I was hearing, it was faith itself, the sound of souls that refused to die, even when everything else was taken from them. "The world saw slaves," he said, "but I saw worshipers." His words shook through me like wind through the trees. They carried my spirit through storms. They believed when others cursed. They loved when the world hated them. The scenes began to swirl, faster generations unfolding before my eyes. Mothers praying in the dark, fathers singing hymns after days of pain, children whispering the name of Jesus in secret, and above it all, his light, always his light. Then Jesus turned to me, and his voice grew soft again. "You have judged by sight, but I see the unseen. You look at color, I look at hearts." Those words pierced me like lightning, because I knew he wasn't just talking about history, he was talking about me, about us, about how easily we divide what he made whole. I couldn't hold his gaze any longer. My eyes filled with tears, and as I bowed my head, I realized this wasn't a dream to witness, it was a truth to carry. The air grew still again, the singing faded, and his final words echoed inside me like an eternal heartbeat. "The time has come for you to see as I see." Then everything went silent, and in that silence I knew the revelation was only beginning. The light began to move again, circling us like a living wind. It carried a warmth I can't describe, not heat but truth. Every breath I took seemed to burn with meaning. Jesus' face was calm, yet his eyes were heavy, as if he carried the weight of centuries inside them. Then he stretched out his hand and the light turned into scenes. I saw faces, hundreds of them, men, women, and children with skin dark as the soil they worked, eyes bright as morning stars. They were walking, singing, falling, rising again. The sound of drums throbbed somewhere far away, like the pulse of the earth itself. "These," he said, "are my people of endurance." The words didn't echo in the air, they echoed in me. The vision deepened. I saw ships cutting through the ocean, full of chained bodies, but even there, songs rose from below deck. I saw hands bleeding from work, yet lifted in prayer. I saw generations, their laughter, their grief, their faith woven together like golden threads in a dark tapestry. "The world counted them by the color of their skin," Jesus said. "I counted them by the light of their hearts." Every image felt alive. The ground beneath their feet glowed, as if heaven itself was following them. He showed me mothers teaching their children to forgive before they could even spell the word. He showed me fathers holding families together when everything around them had fallen apart. "They have carried hope through the wilderness," he whispered. "When others cursed me, they praised. When others built walls, they built songs." The vision changed again. I saw great cities, Harlem, Lagos, Johannesburg, Atlanta, vibrant and full of sound. I saw choirs filling churches with fire, voices rising like incense. I saw preachers thundering truth, artists painting pain into beauty, children dancing in joy that no oppression could erase. "They are not forgotten," he said, and his voice trembled. "They are the mirror of my endurance. Through their trials, the world will know the strength of grace." Then, for a heartbeat, he was silent. The light dimmed, and I saw his face wet with tears again. "You must tell them," he said softly, "that I never turned away. Their cries reached my throne. Their praise shook heaven. What the world called broken, I have made sacred." In that instant, the air itself seemed to sing. I felt history breathing, every name, every prayer, every melody rising together into one eternal chorus. The fire around us shifted from gold to deep violet, and I understood this wasn't about guilt or division, it was revelation. God wasn't pointing fingers, he was unveiling beauty. A beauty born in pain, refined by faith, and destined to shine until the end of time. Then Jesus turned toward me one last time in that vision. "Now you see," he said. "Tell the world to stop looking down, for those they call least are often the ones who carry the crown." And with that, the light began to fade. The song softened, like waves pulling back into the sea. I could still hear his words, echoing in my chest. They are my living testimony, proof that love endures through every storm. The vision dissolved, but its fire stayed in me. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still hear those voices singing, praying, forgiving, reminding the world what true strength looks like. When the vision faded, I realized I was still standing in that same light, but something inside me had changed. It wasn't just what I saw that shook me, it was what I felt. For the first time in my life, I could feel the weight of another people's pain, not as a distant history lesson, not as something to pity, but as something holy. It was as if their tears had been mixed into the oceans of heaven, and now those waters were washing over me. I fell to my knees. My body wasn't weak, but my soul couldn't stand. I covered my face with my hands, but the tears wouldn't stop. I wasn't just crying for what they went through, I was crying for my blindness, for all the times I'd passed through life without really seeing anyone, for all the ways I'd looked at people through the eyes of the world instead of the eyes of God. The light pulsed softly, like it was breathing with me, and I heard his voice again, calm, steady, tender. "This is why I showed you, so you would see what I see, not just their pain, but their strength." I lifted my head, and he was still there, standing in that quiet brilliance. "They are not victims," he said. "They are victors. They were crushed, yet not destroyed. They were silenced, yet their song never died. Through them, the world will know what true faith looks like." His words pierced straight into me, not like accusation but revelation. It was as though the walls inside my heart were collapsing one by one. Every prejudice, every assumption, every quiet superiority I didn't even know I had, all of it melted in the light of his truth. I whispered, barely able to speak, "Lord, how could you still love us when we keep dividing what you made whole?" He didn't answer with anger. He didn't list our failures. He simply looked at me with those same eyes that had seen everything since the beginning of time, and said, "Because my love isn't earned, it's given, and it's stronger than your division." I broke completely then. I sobbed like a child who had been lost and finally found. Every memory of pride, every thought of judgment, every fear of difference, it all burned away in the light of that mercy. And then Jesus placed his hand over my heart. It wasn't physical, but I could feel it warm, electric, alive. "Tell them," he said. "Tell the world that I am coming for a people united in love, not divided by color. Tell them that I made every shade of skin with intention to paint the earth with my glory." As he spoke, I saw the earth below spinning, glowing, filled with light of every color. From every nation, every race, light was rising into the sky, merging into one. No borders, no hatred, no fear, just worship. "This," he said, "is what heaven looks like." And as I stared into that beauty, I felt peace. Not the kind you read about, the kind that unhooks you from fear forever, the kind that rewrites who you are. My tears slowed, my breathing steadied. For the first time, I wasn't just watching the vision, I was part of it. The message wasn't just for me to hear, it was for me to carry. And as the light began to fade again, I heard one final whisper, soft as a heartbeat. "Now you understand, love is not a word. It's the fire that survives every storm." When the light finally faded, I didn't feel myself falling, I felt myself landing. softly, quietly, like a feather finding its home again after being carried too long by the wind. The air around me was still, and for a moment I thought I was still in that holy place. But then I heard the steady ticking of my clock. 3:43 a.m. I was back, in my room. The lamp was still off. The rain had returned outside, tapping gently against the window like distant applause. For a while I couldn't move. My hands were still trembling, my pillow damp with tears that hadn't yet dried. But my heart felt different. It wasn't heavy anymore, it was awake. I sat up slowly, breathing in the silence. The world outside hadn't changed, but I had. Everything looked the same, yet nothing was the same. I reached for a notebook on my bedside table and began to write. My fingers could barely keep up with the rush of memory, every word Jesus spoke, every vision, every feeling. It was as though the message itself didn't want to fade with sleep. It wanted to live. They are my people of endurance. They are not forgotten. I wrote the words over and over, afraid I might lose them if I didn't trap them on paper. And then, just as I set the pen down, I felt his presence again, faint but unmistakable. A whisper, gentle as breath. Speak the truth, even if the world does not believe you. The words echoed inside me like a bell in a vast cathedral. Not loud, not forceful, but impossible to ignore. It was a calling, a responsibility, a fire that would never let me rest again. I looked out the window. The night was beginning to give way to dawn. The clouds were breaking open, and a thin line of light stretched across the horizon. It wasn't just morning, it was a message. Because that's what it felt like. The world was waking up with me. The darkness hadn't disappeared, it just wasn't in control anymore. The light had come to stay. As I watched the sunrise, I thought of everything I'd seen, the faces, the songs, the tears, the endurance. I realized how blind I'd been for so long, how small my world had become when I only saw through human eyes. That night, Jesus didn't just reveal truth about others, he revealed truth about me, that my faith had grown comfortable, my compassion selective, my love conditional. But he wasn't condemning me, he was inviting me to see deeper, to see through him, and that realization changed everything. Because once you've looked through the eyes of love, you can never unsee what you've seen. Once you've heard the cry of heaven, you can't return to silence. I sat there as the light filled my room, whispering the same prayer over and over. Thank you for letting me see. Help me never to forget. The city outside began to stir, cars starting, birds waking, people rising to another day. But to me, it wasn't just another day. It was the first day of a new life. I didn't tell anyone what happened, not yet. Some things are too sacred to rush. But deep down, I knew this story wasn't mine to keep. It was a seed, planted by heaven, waiting for the right moment to bloom. And as the sunlight touched my face, I realized I hadn't simply returned from a dream. I had returned from a conversation that would echo for the rest of my life. The morning light kept rising, spilling gold across my room, and for a long time I just sat there, still, silent, overwhelmed. I had seen something I couldn't unsee. I had heard something I couldn't forget. And as the world woke up around me, I realized this dream wasn't about me at all. It was about us, about every soul that ever wondered if God still sees them. I used to think faith was something you practiced once a week, a habit, a ritual, a few songs and prayers. But now I know it's more than that. Faith is seeing with heaven's eyes. Faith is choosing love when the world teaches you to fear. Faith is remembering that every single human being, no matter where they were born or what shade their skin carries, was carved by the same Creator from the same breath. I could still hear his voice echoing softly in my spirit. Tell them I'm coming for a people united in love, not divided by color. Those words have followed me ever since, not like a command, but like a heartbeat, a reminder that God doesn't need perfect people, He needs willing ones. He needs eyes that see past difference, hands that reach instead of point, hearts that heal instead of hate. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see that vision, the faces shining like gold, the songs rising from the shadows, the tears that turned into worship. And every time I feel the same fire in my chest, the same call. Maybe that's why you're hearing this story now. Maybe it's not just a story. Maybe it's a message meant for you too. Because I believe every person alive carries a piece of the divine, a spark of that same light I saw that night. And if we could just see each other through that lens, the world would change overnight. So if you're listening to this, wherever you are in your car, your kitchen, or a quiet corner of your soul, hear this. You are not forgotten. You are not unseen. You are loved deeply, completely, eternally. And so are they the ones you don't understand, the ones you've been taught to fear, the ones who look nothing like you? Because love, real love, doesn't pick sides. It redeems them. That's what I learned from the dream. That's what He wanted me to see. So I'll leave you with the same verse that still whispers in my heart each morning. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, slave nor free, male nor female, for we are all one in Christ Jesus. Galatians 3:28. The light that found me that night has never left. It still follows me into every sunrise, every conversation, every face I meet, and I believe it's following you too. Because somewhere beyond all our noise and division, love is still speaking, still calling, still saying, I made you all in my image. Now learn to see each other that way. And that is how one dream changed the way I see the entire world.